hear you. Okay. So, I have a pretty new channel. I mean, I've been involved with politics, just kind of absorbing like leftist media for a while now. But I really started this channel kind of digging into the whole Ethan Klein Hasan drama. But my goal for it is that it's bigger and better than that. Like not just looking at drama between two ostensibly leftist people. And so I think like getting people on and talking with them about politics is something that I've definitely wanted to do, which is why I'm super excited to have you on. So, would you be comfortable like introducing yourself?
Yeah, of course. My name is Gerrit, and I'm a recent graduate with a PhD in media studies with a focus in politics. And I've actually written my dissertation on the online left and also focused heavily on kind of the sphere around Hassan Piker because he is the largest content creator of the left as of right now. And obviously, I'm also heavily invested with what's going on between him and Ethan Klein. I've been a long time fan of both of them, but I obviously was aware of Ethan's podcast way before, and even his previous content way before Hassan. So he was kind of always with me in that
Mm-hmm.
sense. I've always consumed his content, and I was always very defensive of him and his crew, and I was always kind of, very charitable um in their own arguments, and I was always like listening, and I always found a way to agree with them. But I've also been a longtime fan of Hassan since 2019, and it's just that, yeah, I don't know. It's difficult right now to kind of consume Ethan's content because it has become so incredibly, I don't know, toxic and malicious, and it really feels like he's spiraling down a path that is really dangerous for him and for a lot of his viewers. And it's crazy. It's what's happening right now. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, and I actually like discovered you through a post you did on the H3 subreddit, and I thought that post was really important in kind of a time when it's a lot of negativity happening on that subreddit, at least from what I've perusing. And whenever Hassan gets mentioned, it's definitely negative. And I know that Ethan responded to you actually with that post, and so I'm pulling your post up here, but could you just like summarize it while I'm getting it?
Yeah. So basically, Ethan was on election day
Oh shoot, my computer is dying, I think.
comments, and he was pointing towards like these subreddits, I think called the Deed program, and other channels and Twitter accounts that are making statements such as, "Oh, we need to destroy America from within. We need to, elect Trump so that he can destroy the country, and then we can rise from the ashes." All that stuff, right? That's kind of what he was also
Right.
claiming about being um, essential of socialism. Um, and that was like, for me, the trigger. I was like, now we're not just attacking people that criticize Ethan, now we're attacking everyone who is a socialist or identifies as socialist. And we're generalizing those groups, and by that we're generalizing the left. And he started to sound like, how you would hear Trump, or you would hear JD Vance, or you would hear Tucker Carlson talk about the left, right? As the people that want to destroy America, and the people that want to destroy democracy. And I couldn't believe it that it was coming out of his mouth. And I think he's starting to really ostracize a large portion of his audience that is socialist, left leaning, or leftist, but they're not, as I mentioned in my post, accelerationist, which is the belief that
Yeah.
you need to destroy the country from within by accelerating its self destruction. But that's not all of socialism, that has never been the core of socialism in the on the left. Um, and I just couldn't believe that he was generalizing it like that. And that's why I made the post. And then he responded by claiming, "Oh, actually, no, it is mainstream because look at this subreddit." And it's like, are
Yeah,
we
and I
really
think
looking at a subreddit?
right, and I think Ethan does this a lot where he'll talk about how, oh, I'm not saying that it's all leftists that are advocating for this accelerationist policy, but the effective output of his media is that he is kind of painting all leftists like that because he doesn't bring on counterexamples. And if it's like 5% leftists that do talk about this and he's focusing on it, if he's focusing on it 95% of the time, what message is that sending to his audience?
Exactly. He makes it look like that's all of them. It is exactly what the right does with the left as well. It's just looking at this tiny little margin community and then claim this is everyone. You see the right wingers look at some post where someone said, "Oh, I developed ways how you can make your own estrogen at home," and then it's like, "Look, the Democrats are now forcing your children to become trans, and they're teaching them how to make estrogen." No, it's just some person on Twitter, and probably 16 years old, has no political power whatsoever, has a few followers.
Mm-hmm.
Their comment got maybe 5 likes. It's so insignificant in the greater scheme, but they're focusing on that, and Ethan does that now too. He focuses on the subreddit, which again is probably filled with lots of children, literally minors, who feel very powerless in the world and just try to find a way to communicate their frustration. And sometimes people, when they get really sad and really frustrated, they become very destructive in their rhetoric. And Ethan looks at it and goes, "Oh, see, this is the left. It's so stupid because these people have no power. They have no power. They all they have is this little outlet online. They can't change anything. They can't, it's most of them can't even vote. And then to just like look at the left and say this is who you are is ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And something that I kind of wanted to go back to that you were talking about is how, like, I haven't really been watching H3 that much, but as a longtime fan, I feel like you can speak more to this. But a really powerful form of, I guess, normalizing propaganda is when there's just a show that doesn't really, it's not very explicitly political, but they will kind of make their leanings known. And I think that's something that Joe Rogan does so expertly well. He'll be like, I'm an apolitical guy. I just listen to whatever comes my way. But he clearly has a right wing stance to his show, and those come out in his interviews. And I think that's something
Yeah.
that uh, H3, the H3 podcast, was able to do so well. They're clearly progressive, but they're not overtly political. And in that way, they kind of normalize progressive policies. So is that kind of something that you've been researching in your PhD on, like leftist media? And is that something that drew you towards the H3 podcast?
Yeah, I mean, it didn't draw me to the H3 podcast. It was rather that I was always a fan of the comedy. I watched H3 because I wanted to have an outlet where I can, I'm a academic. I deal with a lot of very heavy content every day, and I write a lot of very serious stuff. And every now and then, I want to watch something very stupid. And for me, kind of not a guilty pleasure because I was proud. I mean, not proud, but I was always happy to be a fan of H3. But H3 was like my outlet for that. And then when it became very political, especially after October 7, it has become significantly more difficult for me to watch. I mean, I've kept watching, and after Leftovers ended, for a time it started to get a little better because Ethan stopped talking about Israel. But now he's got back to it, and even worse. Now he's not just talking about a few people. He's talking about an entire ideology. Um, and You're right. One of the things that I analyzed, particularly in regards to Hassan Piker, is that he communicates political beliefs and political ideas and theories in a very easy to consume way. By he makes it, not always, but often, he makes it very fun. He has a very playful kind of persona. He's very vocal, very vulgar. He's not very serious. He doesn't have these like traditional barriers that you see in
Hmm.
mainstream media. He's very authentic, right? It's what people are drawn to. If he's mad, he's going to show you he's mad, but then you feel also like it's authentic, it's genuine, and you feel like he's actually speaking to you, and or he's speaking from the heart. Um, which is something that a lot of people, especially younger people, are drawn to. And then he also mixes in some video game content, or he watches some funny clips and stuff. Like it makes it a very communal experience, and it makes it, yeah, enjoyable to talk about politics and like deal with the subject.
Yeah.
Um, and similarly, that was the case with Ethan, right? When he finally came out as being progressive,
Yeah, it came
it has
out
become
like
fun to watch the content.
right. And that's kind of something that I've been thinking of in terms of just how communities are built. And like when I first started covering this drama, I'm like, okay, it's kind of dumb. It seemed like something kind of small at first, I would say, when Ethan starts talking about how, oh, I just wanted to call out that Hasan is allowing these anti-Semitic views to build up in his community. And I didn't really know, so I just, I recorded myself going through it. And usually this drama especially between leftist creators, is like a very small thing, and ultimately it's insignificant. A lot of people, I feel like, will just forget about it a few weeks later, and then everyone will move on with their lives. But do you see the idea of covering this drama and actually trying to like define what the issues are that these two pretty large creators online have with each other as something that is important? Like, do you think that it has ramifications outside of just a few people like drama farming off of it?
Um, it's a tough question because it's very complex. For one, there is a large portion that will abuse this conflict for their own good to show, oh, look, see, Hassan's group is extremist, they're radical, they're terrorist sympathizers. There are people who are going to use that, right, to for their own goals,
Mm-hmm.
to divide the left even more. And you might also get people like Ethan to. It seems like Ethan watches a lot of stuff and he reads a lot of stuff, right? I've
Yeah.
never seen a content creator who posts someone's Reddit comment and then reacts to the Reddit comment on Instagram. It's crazy. It
Right.
feels like
How
he's
long did
always
it take
reading.
it for him to respond to the comment you left on his Reddit? Like a
Oh, that
day?
was like 10 minutes. Like,
Yeah,
I don't
it's
know. It was like
crazy.
within the same hour.
Yeah, that was really surprising because I saw your post
Sorry.
and it was getting a lot of attention. And then it seems like I click refresh and there was a response from Ethan Klein talking about your post. And then,
Yeah, it literally happened almost immediate.
yeah, and I guess like the importance of covering some like drama like this is that you are kind of defining what the issues actually are. And when you were talking about how people will blow this drama up to try to create more division among the left, that really reminded me of how I'm seeing Destiny's community react to this. And I don't know what your experience with his community is. I barely have anything, but I just see people saying, oh, it feels like there's so many Destiny posters in the H3 subreddit right now. And then I do see clips of people on Destiny's podcast and Destiny himself talking about how they want to take Hasan down for this. They are seemingly feeding clips to Ethan. And then he's coming in with like more ammunition completely unrelated to Israel at all to go after Hasan. So,
Yeah.
have you really experienced Destiny's community? Do you have an opinion about that? And is that kind of an example of what you're seeing people jumping on this drama to create more division?
Yeah. Absolutely. I've talked to a lot of streamers while doing my research, and for instance, I also have had a long interview with Vosh, and we talked exactly about this.
I might have listened to
The
that interview.
You have listened to it?
I might have. I do remember Vosh interviewing people that wanted to talk with him about like research that they're doing.
Oh, okay, cool. Um, yeah, but we also talked about um Destiny, or not Destiny particularly, but rather kind of the drama within the community. And he also mentioned, there's a lot of conflict between Hasan and Destiny. And it seems also that a lot of it is very personal, and it is a little bit unfortunate that communities are kind of used or weaponized to attack one another for maybe very personal things. And I'm seeing kind of similar things happening now with Ethan. It feels like often that Ethan might not really. It feels like Ethan is personally hurt. I think he's really genuinely hurt and feels abandoned by Hasan. And now he kind of, instead of talking to Hasan about it, like actually just calling him,
Hmm.
he does it the only way he knows how to do it. He attacks him online, and he finds other reasons to hate him. And he kind of spirals himself further down that way. And now he's also getting communities involved to attack Hasan, which again I think are just based on his emotional investment and maybe his potential, his former friendship. It really feels like that the last leftovers episode, and also when Hasan was on Ethan's, he did like a member stream where he called Hasan because he felt like
Oh yeah,
he was being uh attacked by his community and insulted, etc. And Ethan got really mad at Hasan for not calling them out or banning them. And he also talked a lot about Frogan, etc. It really feels like Ethan just felt kind of hurt and personally attacked and kind of abandoned by his friend. And it's just now like because of that spiraling downwards and attacking Hasan. And again, he's just, yeah, he's being abused by other communities, but in a lot of people are exploiting this dynamic right now, and are contributing to the hate.
yeah, and it really does seem like the end goal of all of this is to seek some kind of punishment for Hassan. Not only of the
Yeah,
people co-opting Ethan's campaign against him, but from Ethan himself, and that is really disheartening to see. I
I
recently
think
did.
that's really
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I think that's really what it is. It's about punishment. It's about, I think Ethan wants Hasan to, I think he generally feels ignored. Hasan is ignoring him,
Yeah,
obviously.
right. Yeah.
He actively is not engaging with Ethan's content, or only like based on clips. And I think that was kind of what got Ethan even more mad. Um, but at the same time, I also fully understand Hasan's position. It's it's getting ridiculous. There's so much happening right now, and there's really no time to talk about. Especially, it was a couple days before the election,
Mm-hmm.
and there's just no time to talk about personal stuff between creators. Um, and I can understand that Hasan is just also frustrated because he's very used to being attacked by people and attacked by communities.
Yeah.
So for him, it just feels like the same old, right? But to Ethan, it definitely felt like a personal attack, and a kind of like um a looking down upon, almost as if he's not even
Right. Almost like dismissing
acknowledging
him,
Ethan as a person.
dismissing Ethan and dismissing Ethan's feelings. And I feel like, yeah, I totally
Yeah.
agree with your assessment that Ethan is. I feel like the main driving of this campaign is that Ethan's feeling emotional about it. And I was just going to say that I did go back and I watched the Israel versus Palestine episode of Leftovers, listened through that. And even in that moment, it really felt like I saw a lot of like dialogue patterns between Hassan and Ethan when they were even talking face to face that I can recognize in this like post versus post drama. Namely, Ethan like making a claim that has a lot to do with his emotions, and then Hassan kind of trying to contextualizing it, not outright dismissing it, and then Ethan will just say, "Oh, well, you're not really addressing my claim. Why are you talking about the broader context of this?" And
Mhm.
I know we don't really need to get into the Israel Palestine stuff. I do. So I really appreciate you talking to me about the H3 drama. But we just had an election that happened yesterday, and I feel like Ethan's going to start a whole new attack on Hasan because Hasan didn't outright endorse Kamala Harris. And this is kind of the newer thing, right? And this has to do with your post of the socialism. Ethan's now attacking leftists for making Trump win the presidency again. So, just
Well,
kind of what are your general feelings of this new tact that Ethan's taken against socialists?
honestly, when I saw the results, I just knew. I honestly at this point, I don't know what's gonna happen to H3. I think we saw if you watch I watched the majority of their election coverage.
Yeah, I haven't watched it yet, but
Um,
I might. If is there anything worth
you
checking
should.
out there?
Yeah, because you can see how even the crew got to the point where they were a little bit fed up with Ethan. Dan got really mad at Ethan. Not well, he says he wasn't mad, but he was definitely emotional. Because they were calling Phil Philip DeFranco while he was streaming.
Okay.
Um, and Phil was um not very happy about the call because a lot of people, when Ethan called Phil while he was streaming, were of Phil's community were typing in the chat, "Oh, look at it's Ethan, the Zionist, the Nazi, the genocider, and et cetera, et cetera." And
So
Phil
just
got
as,
very kind of protective.
is Phil
Mhm.
DeFranco a more progressive voice? Because I've seen his coverage of Ethan versus Hassan, but it's kind of been hard for me to gauge where he stands. Um,
I think he, in the past few years, I think he has moved more to the left. He has always been kind of a centrist,
yeah,
but I
that's
think he
what I thought he
actually,
was.
yeah, but he has moved much more progressive in recent
Okay.
years. I think it's also because ever since he's become a father, he's been very he's been very vocal about kind of gun laws and scaring being afraid of his sons or children. I don't know how many children he has. Uh, safety in
Yeah.
school, etc. I think that a lot of things have happened recently that has made him much more progressive or left leaning.
Okay.
And I don't know. I don't know, Phil. I don't want to make any claims, but it does seem like, based on his coverage, that he does consume a lot more Hassan Piker. Um, and he's definitely not really involved with the H3 community. Because he in the phone call himself, he said he tries to stay out of the drama.
Yeah,
He's
he hasn't
aware that
really
it's happening, but he
criticized
tries to
Ethan,
not
right?
read anything.
Yeah, he hasn't
Hmm?
really been involved with criticizing Ethan for anything he's done. So, okay, just wanted that context. So Ethan's calling him during the election, basically.
Yeah, yeah. And Phil wanted to kind of uh he didn't really want to talk. He wanted to um just continue his stream, and you could tell by
Yeah.
his kind of body language and the way he spoke. But then Ethan kept making kind of digs at him, saying like, "Oh, we should go for a walk and etc. We should like go hiking." And then in his chat,
Weird.
even more people kept saying like, "Oh, he's a Zionist. Don't talk to him. He's a genocide supporter." Um, and Phil started saying like, "Oh, okay. I think my community is getting mad at me. I think I should stop calling you. I think I should stop the call."
Mm-hmm.
And and Ethan just said like, "Oh yeah, if you talk to me, by the way, you are definitely you are supporting genocide, just so you know." And you could
Okay.
tell that Phil was not really happy about even talking about these. He said like, "Oh, I'm trying to
Right.
stay out of this conversation.
Yeah.
So I think I'm gonna hang up now." And Ethan kept like saying stuff to kind of get Phil to react more and more. Overall, it was a bad call. And then Dan was mad about it and said, "Hey, you really kind of killed the moon right now. What the fuck did you do?" And Ethan, you could tell there was a conflict between Ethan and Dan. Ethan didn't understand what he did wrong, and then Dan said like, "Yeah, well, you fucked up. Like you shouldn't have called him, and you brought everything down because now blah blah blah." It
Yeah.
was a very heated exchange. You should definitely check
Yeah, I'm
out
gonna
the
have to
stream if you
watch
can.
that. Um,
Yeah, and even Olivia was like, "Hey, Ethan, yeah, I don't know, this can be clipped, and it doesn't sound good." And Ethan got mad at them and told them like,
jeez.
kind of told them like, "Can you please stop criticizing me? I'm a Jewish person who gets called a Nazi, and this is very important to me, and I want to
Oh my
talk about
god.
this." Because they kept saying like, "Let's not talk about this. Let's not talk about this."
Was
And
that
he
like
kept
the
saying like,
first
"Oh,
time?
let's bring down the mood more."
Was that
Hmm?
the first time it came up during the stream, like that call, or was he kind of talking about socialists not voting for Kamala and the anti-Semitism he was experiencing throughout the night, or was it kind of isolated to that moment?
Yeah, it was just because he called Phil that that whole topic was brought up, and people, his
Interesting.
crew, just didn't want to talk about it. They were fed up with the topic. But Ethan wanted to, and he kept saying like, "No, let's talk about this." And Dan said, "No, let's not. Can we please not do this today?" And Ethan's like, "Why? I want to talk about this. Why can't I talk about this?" And you could tell that everyone there, not everyone, but definitely Olivia and Dan, were just not willing to talk about
Right.
it
Yeah.
and or have this be the topic of the stream.
Yeah, I've seen some posts talking about how the crew isn't really supporting Ethan. I've gotten some comments on my videos, specifically like AB and Dan, who I know on the Leftovers podcast, he's like identified as a socialist. How
Yeah.
they're kind of not really happy with the way that Ethan's taking the show. I've always kind of chalked that up to people being too online and like emotionally invested, but it does seem like there's some actual differences of opinion on the show. And that, I guess, do you think that Ethan is in kind of a transitional period where his maybe if we talk about his audience's politics and we could say it peaked during Leftovers, because I know that Ethan said multiple times now, if you disagree with me, you can go ahead and unsubscribe. And he is going to
Mhm.
be courting more right wing audience members when a lot of his content is attacking Hasan, and we know how many haters Hasan has, and there's a marketplace for
Yeah.
that kind of content. So, do you see if Ethan continues down this road, not only shifting his audience, but like maybe even losing cast members and employees, and changing the way that changing the people he employs?
Yeah, I don't want to make any calls in that regards because I'm not a member of the crew. I don't know the behind the scenes. I know
Yeah,
Dan is very protective of Ethan. I think they are very close friends. And I think that a little bit quarrel between friends is normal.
right. And that's what people
But
said between Hasan and Ethan a year ago.
yeah, I mean, true. But the thing is that at this point, I don't know. After after the last stream, it did feel like Dan was kind of
Over it.
hurt or just like tired.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's hard to say. I also don't know what the contracts are. There's a chance that they just have to be willingly super nice because they have to stick to the contract and they can't quit.
Right.
That's like a more very negative perspective. Or maybe they're just too close friends with Ethan and just care about their relationship with Ethan more than about politics. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's hard to say, but it is definitely clear, especially for AB. I feel very bad for AB because he's definitely getting attacked the most for being on the podcast by his own community.
Right.
We saw literally, it's funny, AB always talks about Dearborn, being from Dearborn,
Okay.
being from there, and then you look at the voting turnout in Dearborn, and you can see that the Muslim community has not voted for Kamala. So it does show that he's very kind of in the middle of this whole conflict, and
Yeah.
him being on the podcast is hurting him in his personal
And
life.
it's kind of making him a target for both sides because he can get I can foresee him getting attacked by people that would consider themselves liberals and blaming people like him and people with his views that didn't vote for Kamala. And I can also see people that didn't vote because of the genocide that's happening of blaming him for continuing to work for a guy like Ethan, who's I think it's kind of fair to say has run defense for Israel, at least effectively in terms of how he chooses to cover the conflict.
Hmm.
And I think, yeah, I think this would be like a fine. point to stop talking about H3 for now. I don't know if you'd be open to it. I would love to have you back on, maybe a bit later down the line as we've seen this drama kind of unfold itself and maybe settle down. But this does kind of bring up a really important point, which is the election. And I know you said that you were, it obviously happened last night. So we haven't had this news for that long to kind of wrap our minds about it. But what are your immediate thoughts? Kind of like, where does your thought process go when you wake up? Or I don't know if you stayed up late. I went to bed early and then I woke up and I found that Trump had won. Uh,
I was up late. I was up late. I waited until the last second.
Oh, wow. I went to bed. I'm like, this isn't looking good. Pennsylvania still has votes to count. Pennsylvania might go to Kamala Harris. I'm going to go to bed and just, be in a good mood as I sleep. And then I'll deal with it tomorrow morning when I wake up.
Yeah. No, unfortunately, that did not happen. It's looking dire. It's looking so dire. As of right now, it's still. I mean, I haven't checked in a second, but let me look. It might still be. Yeah, it's still unclear whether the Republican Party will win the House.
Oh, yeah.
They're currently at 201 seats, and Dems are at 184. It's not looking good for the Dems for sure, but if they get the House as well, they got the Senate already, they got the White House, they got
Hmm.
this the office, they got the Supreme Court. If they get the House as well, then it's free reign. They can do whatever they want without any pushback. It's gonna
Yep.
be it's gonna be it's gonna be tough. I don't know.
And
It's scary. I'm
not only
Yeah.
did all of the Republicans win all of this, but within the Republican Party, Trump's been pushing out everyone that would resist him. So it's a little bit different than just Republicans controlling all three branches of House. It's a completely unified underneath an authoritarian figure controlling all three branches of the government.
Yeah. Yeah, I it's dire. It's really scary. I'm also really worried about the global political, outlook, just
Hmm.
because like the US has had a massive influence on what happens in Ukraine, and they are now, Ukraine basically lost their ally because Trump is not going to support them. He's going to be all Putin, and then he's also not going to support Gaza. So
Oh, yeah.
it's scary. It's just the wars it's themselves are looking very dire too.
It's Gaza is super depressing to think about because the way I look at it, it's there's not going to be a Gaza by the time we have another presidential election. Um,
If we
I mean, we can sit here all day talk about the downsides. I have two questions for you right now. What did the
Yeah.
Democrats do wrong? And then, by extension, what can Democrats do better in the future? And my second question is, what can we do between elections as people that are on the left, as people that want to get involved with politics and make a change? And these are like extremely big questions, but do you have any thoughts on those?
I've said to you privately before that it's still very early to kind of say decisively what was the cause. We can definitely see that a massive amount of, I mean, if we just look at the overall voter turnout, it's very low, especially
Mm-hmm.
in comparison to Biden in 2020. And it just shows you that based on kind of the communities that voted and how they voted, that a lot of people were really felt left out or abandoned by Kamala in regards to kind of the Israeli Palestine conflict.
Yeah.
Um, People needed to hear more positive and more. They needed to hear more kind of concrete plans how they deal with the conflict. It definitely the solution was definitely not weaponizing or contributing more weapons to Israel.
Right.
Um, that definitely has not helped the vote. quite the opposite. People feel like they're not taking it serious. They're saying all the nice things like, oh, we need to stop the war and it's time for a ceasefire, but they're not actually actively doing anything to actually achieve that, right? So there's a lot of people, especially the Muslim community, felt like not, bending the knee towards Kamala just because she might be the better choice between the two, but at the same time, she's not doing anything actively to encourage them to vote for them. So they also just it was a very emotional election. I think a lot of people voted out of, from their heart and not really from the brain in
Mm-hmm.
that sense. Um, how they felt about the conflict was more important than,
And
what potentially could a Trump presidency mean.
I feel like that rhetoric of more talking about peace, and even if you're saying like I'm gonna stop giving Israel arms, and I know Kamala Harris would always talk about we need a ceasefire now, we need an immediate return of the hostages, and that's what the Democratic Party's line is. But Trump said I'm gonna end all of these conflicts as soon as I get in there. So he even ran on peace, and Kamala Harris went with like a much more nuanced approach, kind of just
Yeah.
towing the party line. And I feel like that even contributed to the Republican sentiment of we don't want war, we don't want constant war. And I feel like
Yeah.
if she came up with a stronger message for peace, then that could have even contributed to Republicans voting for her rather than this I'm going to try to both sides Israel versus Palestine right now.
Yeah. It's definitely that, and it's also just in general, the I don't know, the Democratic Party is, especially Kamala, she did a lot of kind of centrist. She proposed a lot of centrist
Yeah,
policies. She was very strong on the border too, kind of extending what Trump was doing. Um, she was doing a lot of, and a lot of her rhetoric was very kind of trying to appease Republicans and trying to
exactly.
get more Republicans to vote for her. But it's always the same thing. There's no need in appeasing Republicans because they're going to vote Republican. You don't need to sound like a Republican. There's the Republican
Mm-hmm.
candidate. He's doing all of that
Exactly.
even tougher. So don't talk to them. Talk to your people, the Democrats,
And I think we
the
saw
Democrat.
that evidence with the election results. I don't have the stat in front of me, but I'm pretty sure it's 95% of Republicans voted for Donald Trump. 95% of Republicans voted for Donald Trump in both 2020 and 2024.
Yeah, of course. Why would they vote for Kamala? Like, great, she does one thing that Trump does, okay, but that's for them not enough, and for the Democrats, it's
It's
it's disgusting. We don't want
yeah,
to vote for that.
it's like the opposite of a ED pill. You're giving someone erectile dysfunction by by like cutting it out. And then the other thing that I think
Yeah.
is hilarious is like the whole Liz Cheney thing, how she's campaigning with Liz Cheney and she's like, "Oh, I have a Republican on my ticket." It's like, "Okay, you have a
Uh,
Republican that the Republicans voted out. They don't like Liz Cheney.
yeah.
You're not going to get it's like the run Republican you have lost her campaign because she didn't have enough support among Republicans.
She was so proud of saying like, "Oh, I'm gonna have a Republican on my team, and it's gonna be we're gonna get all together. We're gonna reunite the country." It's ridiculous. I think we should fully give up on the idea that we can reunite the country.
Hmm.
Um, I don't think there's any point in believing you can convince 50% of the American country, to
Yeah.
kind of switch over, especially at this point. You need to know your own demographic, you need to know your own people, you need to talk to them, and you need to appease them,
Yeah.
not the Republicans.
Exact. Yeah, I agree. And I think that's especially true when we're talking about Republican politicians because even if you get bipartisan support of Republican and you do a bill with Republican politicians, that doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily mean that their constituents are going to vote for your candidate in the next presidential election.
Mm.
And just kind of diving deeper into this idea of strategy, it would be my hope that the Democratic Party is now. I mean, the accelerationists got what they wanted, right? We got another Trump presidency. So, according to that theory, now the Democratic Party should be kind of shattered. I feel like they're a little bit rudderless right now. Their strategy of getting Republican voters every election has just been a complete failure, like objective failure. We have the stats for this. Do you see this as a time where there could be some genuine rise of socialist groups in America, and we can see an actual shift from the Democratic Party to the left in the next, at least in the next 4 years?
I don't think anything that's about to happen is going to be in any way socialist. I don't think that we're going to have Medicare for all or whatever. I don't think that this is. I don't see. I don't see like an uprising in that sense. I also
Yeah.
don't. I'm really dire on the perspective on the Democrats. Based on just like the history, the Democratic Party doesn't really learn. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it feels like they're gonna maybe double down on their takes. They're gonna feel like maybe they feel like, okay, we need to be even more Republican because that's the who gets the vote. There might be, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. It feels like the Democratic Party is gonna do everything they can to appease Republicans, and they're gonna just fully deny the existence of their criticism within their own groups. What the party really needs is a complete kind of redo. Like they need to fully fix the party itself. They need to get rid of a lot of the people in the party. They need to, I guess in regards to your question, what can we do or what's the next step? It really goes down to the same thing as it always is: run for office, run for a seat, run for your local government. Like organize,
Mm-hmm.
try to just kind of change up the Democratic Party, as we have been doing or as has been done in recent years, but it's not enough. And um, I don't know. It's going to be hard. It's going to be tough. It's going to be
Yeah.
difficult to. I think there's going to be a lot of infighting within the Democratic Party as well. And it's going to
Right.
be. I mean, there's already been a lot of infighting, especially in
It's
regards to
essentially
the
leaderless right
Palestinian
now.
conflict, right?
Yeah. Like
Sorry.
I feel like the Democratic Party does have a lot of potential to change at this moment because who's going to be the next candidate? We don't really have a golden boy that's kind of in the wings waiting to have the Democratic Party coalesce behind them. And yeah, as you say, like I don't foresee socialism happening anytime soon, and I feel like it's just going to be a struggle to get back to where we were when Obama was president after this four
Yeah.
years. Um, do
That's
you?
why I get
Oh
so
yeah.
annoyed by Ethan, just by the way, just because you mentioned it. It's like, of course, we're not going to have socialism now. It's not, it was never the conversation. It's
Mm-hmm.
let
Right.
these people think and dream and whatever. But right now, no one actually believed that Trump being elected right now is going to cause socialism out of all of a sudden to appear. That's not what anyone believes, or the people that do think that way, they're not serious people. It's ridiculous. We need
Yeah.
to really settle in on reality and talk to like the actual political field and not about some stupid subreddit.
Yeah. Um, and so I just want to say thanks for coming on and talking about this because as stupid and petty as it is, I do think that it can help people feel like they're not alone when there's people talking about how kind of far Ethan's gone, and especially when they're talking about it in good faith, and you're not a Hasan hater or you're not a Ethan Klein hater, and you're trying you. At least for me personally, I am really trying to just like understand these differences and then figure out how they can be resolved. And also, I really appreciate you coming on and talking about the election. Before I let you go, I do want to ask, are there any good socialist groups that either have like a state level presence or even a national level presence in the United States that people could get involved with? And do you know, or do you encourage
Um,
people to just go do their own research, maybe even start a group by themselves?
I mean, that's always a good idea in general, but it's definitely important to look at their local elections, to look at their local uh the groups that are local. I don't have a precise kind of link towards those
Yeah,
communities, but definitely I would do some research. I mean, there is the uh Democratic Socialist uh, of America as a
yeah, the
group.
DSA
Um,
group.
yeah, I don't have any concrete directions right now, and that's always kind of not really been my academic focus either. I was always kind of more focused on the media or
Hmm.
coverage of it. So I'm sorry, I don't have really anything in
No,
particular
that's totally
to point
fine.
towards.
And that's something that I'm going to be personally trying to do, get more involved and see if I can find a socialist group around me. And then I'll
Right.
probably be talking about it more on the channel. But yeah, I
Yeah.
really appreciate you coming on because I think that it's important. And yeah, I'd love to have you on in the future too to talk about politics, talk about dumb drama. Do you plan on remaining on watching H3 content? Like, what is your kind of content diet that you have?
Well, I don't know. I have been following H3 even throughout the past few weeks, but I don't know. I'm gonna see today. I saw that he's gonna be online today. He's gonna stream, so I'm gonna watch it. And I'm curious. I think today is gonna really be decisive on my decision if I'm gonna stick to watching or not. If he's gonna blame the leftists, if he's gonna double down on socialism being the bane of our existence, like if he
Mm,
really goes down that hill today and scapegoating us, then yeah, I don't think I can continue watching. Otherwise, I'm still always watching Hasan. I think he does amazing coverage. I think he does has a very good takes on a lot of and just like a very reasonable approach to politics. And it's just like he gets misclipped, he gets misunderstood. It's I
yeah,
think for me personally, I think I'm just gonna potentially just switch over to just exclusively watching Hasan.
yeah. All right. I think I'm gonna be the same. Watch is on. Majority Report is a channel that I really love to watch. Um,
Of
Secular
course,
talk,
yes, there
but
are other outlets for sure.
right. Yeah. Well, okay. Thanks again for coming on, and hopefully we can talk again in the future.